Remember those bubble lights on the Christmas tree? The ones that bubbled up like tiny lava lamps? Remember popping in that Bing Crosby tape and hearing White Christmas play?
To the best Christmas yet.
Cheers, darling.
That was 1970 Christmas. The one where you circled every toy you wanted in the big Sears book with a red marker. Your living room had that silver tree spinning under colored lights. Your kitchen smelled like turkey cooking all morning. Christmas back then wasn't just one day. It was a whole feeling, slow and special and wrapped up tight. These 30 things lived in your heart until they quietly went away. Every Christmas table in the 70s had that wobbly, colorful creation sitting proudly in the center. Grandma would spend hours making her special jello salad with suspended fruits, marshmallows, and sometimes even vegetables. The lime green or cherry red gelatin shimmered under the dining room lights like edible jewels. Kids loved watching it jiggle when someone bumped the table. Adults pretended it was sophisticated cuisine. Everyone took a small square, even if they didn't particularly love it, because that's what you did at Christmas dinner. The molds came in fancy shapes, stars, wreaths, and rings. Some families had special copper molds passed down through generations. Making the perfect jello salad was an art form. You had to get the timing just right so everything set properly without the fruit sinking to the bottom. Today, jello salads have disappeared from most holiday tables. We've moved on to fresher, simpler salads. Weeks before Christmas, families would transform their formal dining rooms into holiday wonderlands. This wasn't just about setting a table. This was about creating an experience that happened once a year. The good china came out from its protective cabinet. Each plate got hand-washed and inspected for chips. Crystal glasses were polished until they sparkled. The silverware received special attention. Each piece shined to perfection. White tablecloths were ironed with military precision. Not a single wrinkle was acceptable. Cloth napkins were folded into elaborate shapes, sometimes swans, sometimes Christmas trees. Centerpieces were crafted with fresh pine branches, candles, and ornaments. Place cards were handwritten in beautiful cursive. Everyone had an assigned seat. Children sat at the kids' table, dreaming of the day they'd graduate to the adult table. The room stayed off limits until Christmas Day. Walking past it felt like passing a wrapped present you couldn't open yet. The anticipation built with each glimpse through the doorway. When dinner finally arrived, stepping into that transformed space felt magical, like entering a different world made just for this one special meal. Before dinner started, every 70s Christmas table featured an elaborate relish tray. This wasn't a simple vegetable platter. This was a carefully arranged work of art that took genuine effort to create. Celery stalks were cut into perfect lengths and filled with cream cheese or peanut butter. Carrot sticks were peeled and sliced with precision. Radishes were carved into roses that bloomed in ice water. Green and black olives filled small compartments. Pickles came in varieties we rarely see now: sweet gherkins, dill spears, and bread-and-butter chips. Cherry tomatoes added pops of color. Some families included pickled beets or pickled onions. The tray itself was usually glass or silver, divided into sections. It sat on the table for hours before dinner, and guests would nibble throughout the afternoon. Kids would sneak olives and put them on their fingertips. Making the relish tray was often a child's first cooking responsibility. It taught patience and presentation skills. The simple act of arranging vegetables felt important because it contributed to the family celebration. Today, we might throw some vegetables on a plate, but we've lost that sense of ceremony that made even the simplest foods feel special. Ambrosia salad was the sweet, creamy side dish that confused everyone. Was it a salad? Was it a dessert? Nobody knew for sure, but every Christmas dinner had a big bowl of it sitting somewhere on the table. The base was always Cool Whip or whipped cream, folded together with miniature marshmallows. Mandarin orange segments added sweetness and color. Maraschino cherries dotted throughout like little red jewels. Shredded coconut gave it texture and tropical flavor. Some families added crushed pineapple, others included chopped pecans or walnuts. A few adventurous cooks threw in banana slices, though those had to be added at the last minute to prevent browning. The mixture sat in the refrigerator overnight, letting all the flavors blend together. By Christmas Day, the marshmallows had softened slightly, and everything had melded into one creamy, sweet concoction. Children loved Ambrosia salad because it tasted like dessert but was served with dinner. Adults appreciated its simplicity and the way it balanced out heavier, savory dishes. The name itself, Ambrosia, food of the gods, made it feel special and mythological, perfect for a holiday celebrating miracles and magic. Sweet potatoes topped with marshmallows were the ultimate 70s Christmas side dish. This wasn't just food, this was a statement about abundance, sweetness, and holiday excess in the best possible way. The process started with boiling sweet potatoes until they were soft enough to mash. Some families used canned yams to save time. The mashed sweet potatoes were mixed with butter, brown sugar, and warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. Everything went into a casserole dish and baked until bubbly. Then came the crowning moment, the marshmallow topping. Big, fluffy marshmallows were arranged in neat rows across the top. The dish went back into the oven just long enough for the marshmallows to turn golden brown and slightly melted. When it came out, the top was a landscape of toasted peaks and valleys. The contrast between the sweet, smooth potato mixture and the gooey marshmallow topping was pure comfort. Some people loved it. Others thought it was too sweet. Wait, we're just getting started with these forgotten traditions. The next ones will take you even deeper into Christmas memories you didn't know you missed. Stay with us. Deviled eggs weren't just appetizers in the 70s. They were tiny works of art that required skill, patience, and a steady hand. Every Christmas gathering featured at least one platter of these paprika-dusted delights. Making deviled eggs was a multi-step process. First, you had to boil the eggs perfectly, not too soft, not too hard. Then came the careful peeling, trying not to tear the whites. Each egg was sliced in half lengthwise, and the yolks were scooped into a bowl. The yolk mixture was the secret. Mayo, mustard, a dash of vinegar, salt, and pepper were mashed together until smooth and creamy. Some families added sweet pickle relish. Others preferred a hint of hot sauce. The filling was piped back into the egg white halves using a pastry bag or a plastic bag with the corner cut off. A light dusting of paprika on top added color and a subtle, smoky flavor. The fanciest versions had garnishes, a tiny piece of olive, a sprig of parsley, or a sliver of pimento. These little bites disappeared fast at parties. People would hover near the platter, trying to look casual while keeping an eye on the eggs. Taking the last deviled egg was considered slightly rude, so it often sat alone on the platter until someone finally gave in to temptation. Homemade dinner rolls were a Christmas Day essential, and the process started hours before anyone sat down to eat. The kitchen would fill with the yeast's distinctive smell as dough rose under clean dish towels. Grandmothers and mothers would start early in the morning, mixing flour, yeast, sugar, salt, butter, and warm milk. The dough was kneaded by hand, pushed and folded repeatedly until it became smooth and elastic. This wasn't quick work. It required arm strength and patience. After the first rise, the dough was punched down, a satisfying moment that kids always wanted to help with. Then it was shaped into individual rolls and placed in baking pans. The towels went over the top, and the rolls were set in a warm spot for their second rise. Watching the dough grow was like witnessing a small miracle. The rolls would double in size, pushing against the towels. When they finally went into the oven, the house filled with the most incredible aroma. Every 70s Christmas had at least one fruitcake. It sat on the counter in its decorative tin, looking festive and slightly intimidating. The joke was that fruitcakes were regifted endlessly, but the truth was more complicated. Fruitcakes took weeks to make properly. Candied fruits, red and green cherries, citron, pineapple, were mixed with nuts and a dense, spiced batter. After baking, the cake was wrapped in cheesecloth soaked in brandy or rum. It sat in a cool place, getting fed more alcohol every few days. The alcohol preserved the cake and gave it a distinctive flavor that people either loved or hated. There was no middle ground. The cake became denser and more flavorful as it aged. Some families kept fruitcakes for months. When Christmas arrived, the fruitcake was sliced thin and served with coffee or tea. The texture was unlike any other cake, heavy, moist, and packed with fruits and nuts in every bite. Kids usually avoided it. Adults appreciated it more, especially with a cup of strong coffee. The fruitcake represented old-world baking traditions brought to America by immigrants. It was a link to European Christmas celebrations, where preserved fruits were luxuries. Today, fruitcake is mostly a punchline, but it once held real meaning and required genuine skill to make well. Canned cranberry sauce was transformed into something fancy through the magic of ring molds. The jellied sauce would slide out of the can with its ridges intact, then be placed into a decorative mold and chilled until serving time. Some families made their own cranberry sauce from scratch, cooking fresh cranberries with sugar and orange zest. The berries would pop and burst, creating a thick tart sauce that was both sweet and tangy. This homemade version was often mixed with crushed pineapple or chopped apples. The ring mold presentation made even simple canned sauce look elegant. When unmolded onto a serving plate, it held its shape perfectly. The center of the ring was often filled with something complimentary, maybe cream cheese mixed with nuts or a simple lettuce garnish. Slicing through the cranberry ring at the table was part of the ceremony. Each person got a slice that held together on their plate. The bright red color added festivity to the meal. Cranberry sauce was one of those dishes that divided families. Some people loved it and piled it high on their plates. Others avoided it completely. But having it on the table was non-negotiable. Christmas dinner without cranberry sauce just felt wrong, even if half the family didn't eat it. When the dining room table couldn't hold everyone, TV trays came out for the kids and sometimes the teenagers. These folding tables, with their metal legs and laminated tops, became satellite dining stations throughout the house. Each TV tray was set up with care. A placemat went down first, then a plate, silverware wrapped in a napkin, and a glass. Kids would carry their own trays to wherever they were assigned, usually the living room or den. Eating on TV trays felt like a special adventure when you were young. You got to watch television during dinner, something normally forbidden. Holiday specials played while you ate turkey and mashed potatoes balanced on your lap. The trays themselves were often decorated with patterns, flowers, geometric designs, or scenes. Some families had matching sets. Others had a mismatched collection gathered over years. There was a hierarchy to seating. The youngest kids got TV trays. Teenagers might graduate to the formal table if there was room. The transition from TV tray to dining room table marked growing up in a tangible way. You'd finally made it when you earned a chair at the big table. These traditions are just the beginning. The next 20 will transport you back even further into Christmas dinners that felt like magic. You won't believe what we used to do. The cheese ball wasn't just an appetizer in the 70s. It was a statement piece that announced your family knew how to entertain. Every Christmas party and dinner featured at least one cheese ball, usually sitting prominently on the coffee table or buffet. Making a cheese ball was an art form. Cream cheese formed the base, softened to room temperature so it could be mixed properly. Sharp cheddar cheese was added for flavor and color. Some recipes included blue cheese for tang or pimento cheese for sweetness. The mixture was seasoned with Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, and sometimes a dash of hot sauce. Everything was blended together until smooth and creamy. Then came the shaping. Using plastic wrap or wax paper, the mixture was formed into a perfect sphere. The coating was where creativity shined. Chopped pecans were most popular, pressed into the outside until the entire ball was covered. Other families used chopped parsley, crushed pineapple that was well drained, or even crumbled bacon. Some adventurous cooks made multiple cheese balls with different coatings. The finished product was placed on a decorative plate surrounded by crackers, usually Ritz, wheat thins, or fancy water crackers. A small spreading knife was stuck into the top. Throughout the evening, guests would spread the cheese mixture onto crackers, slowly demolishing the ball until only crumbs remained. Making cheese balls was often a task assigned to teenagers or young adults. It was simple enough to not require expert skills, but impressive enough to make the maker feel accomplished. The tradition brought people into the kitchen together, talking and laughing while rolling cheese into balls. Asparagus, wrapped in thin slices of ham or bacon, tied together with a strip of pimento, was the height of 70s dinner party sophistication. These little bundles appeared at every fancy Christmas dinner, arranged neatly on serving platters. The preparation was time-consuming but straightforward. Fresh asparagus spears were trimmed to uniform length and blanched in boiling water just until they turned bright green. They were immediately plunged into ice water to stop the cooking and preserve that vibrant color. Once cooled, the asparagus was dried carefully. 3 or 4 spears were bundled together and wrapped with a thin slice of deli ham or a strip of partially cooked bacon. A piece of pimento or a thin strip of red bell pepper was tied around the middle like a ribbon. Some recipes called for the bundles to be baked with a cheese sauce drizzled over the top. Others were served cold with a hollandaise or vinaigrette. The presentation was always beautiful. The green asparagus, the pink ham, and the red pimento created Christmas colors on the plate. These bundles represented the 70s obsession with making food look fancy. It wasn't enough for food to taste good. It had to look impressive, like something you'd see in a magazine. The asparagus bundles delivered on that promise, turning a simple vegetable into something that looked like it came from a restaurant. Children often avoided these because asparagus wasn't kid-friendly, but adults appreciated the elegance and the way they added a touch of class to the holiday table. Green bean casserole was more than a side dish in the 70s. It was a cultural phenomenon that appeared at every Christmas dinner without fail. The recipe was so standard that most families didn't even need to look it up anymore. The ingredients were simple and came from cans. Green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and those crispy fried onions that came in a can. Everything was mixed together in a casserole dish, creating a creamy, savory mixture that bubbled in the oven. What made this dish special was its reliability. It never failed. It didn't require fresh ingredients or complicated techniques. Even inexperienced cooks could make a perfect green bean casserole. This made it the go-to dish for people who were asked to bring something to Christmas dinner. The topping of fried onions was crucial. They were sprinkled on top during the last few minutes of baking, so they stayed crispy. When the casserole came out of the oven, those onions were golden brown and crunchy, providing texture contrast to the creamy beans underneath. Families developed their own variations. Some added cheese, others included water chestnuts for extra crunch. A few rebellious cooks used fresh green beans instead of canned, though purists argued this changed the essential character of the dish. The green bean casserole represented convenience cooking at its finest. It was the bridge between scratch cooking and modern shortcuts. It proved that food didn't have to be complicated to be delicious, and that traditions could be built around simple, accessible recipes that brought people together. Wassail was the Christmas punch of the 70s, served hot from a special bowl or slow cooker. The tradition came from Old English customs but was adapted to American tastes with apple cider, orange juice, and warm spices. Making wassail was an event in itself. Apple cider formed the base, heated slowly on the stove. Orange juice was added for brightness. Cinnamon sticks, whole cloves, and allspice berries went in to steep, filling the house with the most incredible spicy sweet aroma. Some recipes included pineapple juice or cranberry juice. Others added a splash of lemon. The mixture simmered for hours, letting all the flavors blend together. Just before serving, orange slices studded with cloves floated on top like little spice-covered boats. The wassail bowl itself was often a family heirloom, a large glass or ceramic bowl with a ladle. In some homes, a slow cooker served the same purpose, keeping the wassail hot throughout the evening. Guests would serve themselves, ladling the steaming liquid into mugs or punch cups. Drinking wassail was part of the Christmas evening ritual. After dinner, everyone would gather in the living room with their mugs, sipping the hot spiced drink while opening presents or singing carols. The warmth spread from your hands to your chest, creating a feeling of comfort and contentment. The tradition connected modern families to centuries of Christmas celebrations. Wassail was mentioned in old carols and stories. Oyster stew on Christmas Eve was a tradition many families followed religiously. This simple soup made from oysters, milk, butter, and seasonings was the prelude to Christmas Day's bigger feast. The tradition came from Catholic families who abstained from meat on Christmas Eve. Oysters were considered acceptable, and the stew was easy to make after a long day of Christmas preparations. It became a tradition that many families kept even after the religious requirement was no longer strictly observed. Making oyster stew was quick. Butter was melted in a pot. Fresh oysters with their liquor were added and cooked just until their edges curled. Milk or cream was heated separately and then combined with the oysters. Salt, pepper, and sometimes a dash of Worcestershire sauce seasoned the mixture. The stew was served in bowls with oyster crackers on the side. Some families added a pat of butter to each bowl. Others sprinkled paprika on top for color. The simplicity was part of the appeal. This wasn't a complicated dish, but it was special because it only appeared once a year. Children often resisted oyster stew at first. The texture was unusual, and the idea of eating oysters seemed strange, but many grew to love it, associating the taste with Christmas Eve excitement and the anticipation of the next day's celebrations. The tradition created a marker in time. Once you'd eaten oyster stew, Christmas had officially begun. We're halfway through these forgotten traditions, and the memories are getting even richer. The next ones will remind you of Christmas dinners that felt like coming home. Keep watching. While turkey dominated Thanksgiving, many families chose standing rib roast for Christmas dinner. This magnificent cut of beef, presented whole at the table before carving, represented luxury and celebration in a way that turkey couldn't quite match. The preparation of a standing rib roast was serious business. The roast had to be brought to room temperature before cooking, which meant planning ahead. It was seasoned generously with salt, pepper, and sometimes garlic or herbs. Some cooks rubbed it with mustard or created a herb crust. The roast went into a hot oven to sear the outside, then the temperature was lowered for slow roasting. The timing was crucial. Roasts were cooked by internal temperature, not by time alone. A meat thermometer was essential. The goal was a perfect medium-rare center with a crusty brown exterior. When the roast was done, it rested for at least 20 minutes before carving. This resting period allowed the juices to redistribute throughout the meat. Meanwhile, the pan drippings were turned into rich gravy with flour, wine, and beef stock. The presentation moment was dramatic. The whole roast was brought to the table on a platter, often garnished with fresh herbs or roasted vegetables. The host would carve it at the table, slicing between the ribs to create thick, juicy portions. Each slice revealed that perfect pink center surrounded by a rim of crusty exterior. Serving standing rib roast showed that Christmas was special, different from ordinary meals. The cost alone made it a once-a-year indulgence for most families. The impressive presentation, the rich flavor, and the sense of abundance all combined to make Christmas dinner feel truly festive and memorable. Twice-baked potatoes were the ultimate fancy side dish in the 70s. They required time and effort, which made them perfect for special occasions like Christmas dinner. These weren't just baked potatoes. They were transformed into individual servings of creamy, cheesy comfort. The process started with large russet potatoes, scrubbed clean and baked until tender. Once they were cool enough to handle, each potato was cut in half lengthwise. The insides were carefully scooped out, leaving a thin shell of potato skin to hold everything together. The scooped potato was mashed with butter, sour cream, milk, and shredded cheese. Some families added crumbled bacon, chopped green onions, or garlic powder. The mixture was whipped until fluffy and light, then spooned or piped back into the potato shells. Extra cheese was sprinkled on top, and the potatoes went back into the oven until they were heated through and the cheese was melted and slightly browned. Some cooks added a final garnish of chopped parsley or chives before serving. The result was like a loaded baked potato, but more elegant and easier to serve at a formal dinner. Each person got their own potato boat filled with creamy goodness. They looked impressive on the plate and tasted like pure comfort. Making twice-baked potatoes was often a 2-day project. The potatoes could be baked and filled the day before, then refrigerated and reheated on Christmas Day. This advanced preparation helped manage the chaos of cooking a large holiday meal. It also meant that one more dish could be perfect, contributing to the overall success of the dinner. Shrimp cocktail was the height of sophistication in the 70s, and presenting it in a ring mold around cocktail sauce elevated it to art. This appetizer appeared at the fanciest Christmas dinners, signaling that this was a special occasion. The preparation started with cooking shrimp properly. They were boiled briefly in seasoned water with lemon, bay leaves, and Old Bay seasoning. The key was not to overcook them. Perfectly cooked shrimp were tender and sweet, while overcooked shrimp became rubbery and tough. Once cooked and cooled, the shrimp were peeled and deveined. The tails were usually left on for easier handling. The shrimp were arranged in a ring on a large platter, all facing the same direction for visual appeal. Some cooks used a ring mold to create a perfect circle. In the center of the ring sat a bowl of cocktail sauce. Ketchup mixed with horseradish, lemon juice, and Worcestershire sauce. The sauce was spicy and tangy, the perfect complement to the sweet shrimp. Lemon wedges were tucked around the ring for garnish and for guests who wanted extra citrus. Eating shrimp cocktail was a social activity. People would stand around the platter at parties, picking up shrimp by the tail, dipping them in sauce, and eating them in 1 or 2 bites. Conversations happened around the shrimp ring. It was a gathering point, bringing people together. The shrimp cocktail ring represented aspiration and special occasion dining. Shrimp were expensive, making them a luxury item. Serving them showed guests that they were valued, that the host had gone to extra effort and expense to make the celebration memorable. Baked Alaska was the show-stopping dessert that ended Christmas dinner with drama and flair. This combination of ice cream and cake, covered in meringue and quickly browned in the oven, seemed impossible. Ice cream that went into a hot oven without melting. Making baked Alaska required planning and confidence. A layer of cake formed the base, usually pound cake or sponge cake, cut to fit the serving dish. Ice cream was softened slightly and shaped into a dome on top of the cake. The whole thing went into the freezer to firm up completely. Just before serving, meringue was prepared by beating egg whites with sugar until stiff peaks formed. The meringue was spread over the entire ice cream dome, sealing it completely from the cake base to the top. Every bit of ice cream had to be covered. This insulation was what protected it from the oven's heat. The assembled dessert went into a very hot oven for just a few minutes, long enough for the meringue to brown and develop those beautiful golden peaks. Some cooks used a kitchen torch instead, carefully browning the meringue without using the oven. The baked Alaska was brought to the table immediately, with the meringue still warm and the ice cream still frozen inside. Sometimes it was flambéed with rum or brandy, creating blue flames that danced across the surface. Cutting into it revealed the magic, warm, toasted meringue giving way to cold, creamy ice cream. The contrast in temperatures and textures was delightful. More than that, serving baked Alaska showed technical skill and confidence in the kitchen, making it the perfect ending to an impressive Christmas dinner. The after-dinner mint collection. After Christmas dinner ended, a special dish of mints appeared on the coffee table. These weren't ordinary mints. They were pastel-colored, melt-in-your-mouth butter mints, or pillowy soft cream cheese mints that had been made days in advance specifically for this occasion. Homemade mints were a labor of love. Cream cheese mints started with softened cream cheese mixed with powdered sugar and peppermint extract. The mixture was kneaded until smooth, then tinted with food coloring, usually pink, green, yellow, or left white. Small portions were pressed into rubber molds shaped like flowers, leaves, or Christmas designs. Buttermints were similar but used butter instead of cream cheese, creating a slightly different texture. They were rolled into small balls and pressed with a fork to create a pattern, or shaped using special mint molds. After shaping, the mints needed to dry and firm up for at least a day. The mints were arranged in a crystal dish or on a fancy plate. They looked like little jewels, pastel colors and delicate shapes that seemed too pretty to eat. But eat them people did, popping one or two into their mouths as they relaxed after the big meal. These mints served multiple purposes. They freshened breath after a heavy dinner. They provided a small sweet bite without being as filling as dessert. They gave hands something to do during conversation, and they signaled that the formal dinner portion of the evening was over, transitioning into a more relaxed gathering time. Making mints was often done by grandmothers or aunts who had the time and patience for such detailed work. The tradition passed down through generations, with younger family members learning the techniques and eventually taking over the mint-making duties themselves. The final 10 traditions are the ones that defined Christmas dinner in the 70s. These are the memories that will hit you right in the heart. You're going to want to hear every single one. The turkey with chestnut stuffing. While many families saved turkey for Thanksgiving, others made it the centerpiece of Christmas dinner, but with a special twist, chestnut stuffing that elevated the bird from ordinary to extraordinary. This wasn't the standard bread stuffing everyone knew. This was something richer, more complex, more suited to the grandeur of Christmas Day. Preparing chestnuts was an undertaking in itself. Fresh chestnuts had to be scored with an X on their flat side, then roasted until the shells cracked open. Peeling them was tedious work. The shells had to be removed while the chestnuts were still warm, along with the papery inner skin that clung stubbornly to the nut meat, but the reward was worth the effort. The chestnuts had a sweet, earthy flavor, unlike any other nut. The stuffing combined the chestnuts with cubed bread, celery, onions, sautéed in butter, and herbs like sage and thyme. Some recipes added sausage for richness, others included apples or dried fruits for sweetness. Chicken or turkey stock moistened everything, creating a stuffing that was flavorful and substantial without being heavy. The turkey itself was prepared with the same care given to any holiday bird. It was seasoned inside and out, sometimes with a compound butter rubbed under the skin to keep the breast meat moist. The chestnut stuffing was loosely packed into the cavity with extra baked in a separate dish for those who preferred more stuffing than turkey. As the turkey roasted, the stuffing absorbed the bird's juices, becoming infused with rich, savory flavor. The chestnuts softened further, their sweetness balancing the savory elements. When the turkey was carved at the table, spoonfuls of that chestnut stuffing were served alongside the meat, creating a combination that tasted distinctly of Christmas. This tradition connected American families to European Christmas customs, where chestnuts were traditional holiday fare. The song, The Christmas Song, even mentioned chestnuts roasting on an open fire, cementing their association with the season. Serving turkey with chestnut stuffing was a way of honoring those old traditions while creating new family memories. It required more work than simpler stuffings, but that extra effort was part of what made Christmas dinner special. The willingness to do something more elaborate, more time-consuming, because the day and the people gathered around the table deserved that extra care and attention. The crown roast of pork spectacle. For families who wanted to serve something truly spectacular, the crown roast of pork was the ultimate centerpiece. This impressive cut, formed by tying 2 racks of pork ribs into a circle, looked like a crown when presented on the table. It was restaurant-quality cooking brought into the home kitchen, a statement of culinary ambition and holiday celebration. Creating a crown roast started at the butcher shop. Most home cooks didn't attempt to prepare the cut themselves. It required specific butchering skills to French the rib bones and tie the racks into their circular shape. A good butcher would prepare it perfectly, with the bones cleaned and trimmed, ready for roasting. At home, the preparation continued. The roast was seasoned generously with salt, pepper, and herbs. Some cooks created a paste of garlic, rosemary, and olive oil to rub over the meat. The bone tips were wrapped in foil to prevent them from burning during the long roasting time. The center cavity of the crown was often filled with stuffing, perhaps a wild rice mixture with mushrooms and herbs, or a fruit-based stuffing with apples and dried cranberries. This stuffing cooked inside the roast, absorbing the pork's rich juices and adding another layer of flavor to the meal. Roasting the crown required patience and attention. The meat needed to cook evenly, reaching a safe internal temperature without drying out. Basting helped keep it moist. Some cooks tented it with foil partway through cooking to prevent over-browning. The presentation moment was pure theater. The foil was removed from the bone tips, which were then decorated with paper frills or small fruits like kumquats or lady apples. The roast was carried to the table on a large platter, often garnished with fresh herbs and roasted vegetables arranged around the base. Carving the crown roast was done at the table, with the host cutting between the ribs to create individual chops. Each person received 1 or 2 chops along with some of the stuffing from the center. The meat was tender and juicy, with a slightly sweet flavor that paired beautifully with traditional Christmas side dishes. Serving a crown roast of pork showed a level of sophistication and effort that impressed guests and made family members feel special. It was expensive, time-consuming, and required confidence in the kitchen. But the visual impact and the delicious results made it worth every bit of effort. It turned Christmas dinner into an event, creating memories that lasted far beyond the meal itself. The flaming Christmas pudding brought to the table in flames was the dramatic conclusion to dinner that left everyone gasping in delight. This dense, dark pudding, filled with dried fruits and spices, was a tradition brought from England but adapted by American families who wanted to add old-world elegance to their celebrations. Making Christmas pudding was a weeks-long process that started in late November or early December. Dried fruits, raisins, currants, candied citrus peel, were soaked in brandy or rum, breadcrumbs, flour, suet or butter, brown sugar, eggs, and warm spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice were mixed together with the soaked fruits. Some recipes included chopped nuts or grated apple. The mixture was packed into a pudding mold or basin, covered tightly, and steamed for hours. The long, slow cooking transformed the ingredients into a dense, moist pudding with deep, complex flavors. After the initial cooking, the pudding was stored in a cool place, wrapped in cheesecloth soaked in more brandy. It was fed additional brandy every week, which preserved it and enhanced the flavor. On Christmas Day, the pudding was steamed again to heat it through. Just before serving, it was unmolded onto a serving platter. The moment of drama came next. Brandy was warmed, poured over the pudding, and ignited. Blue flames danced across the surface as the pudding was carried into the darkened dining room. The formal place, setting with all the courses. Christmas dinner in the 70s wasn't served all at once. Formal dinners followed a specific sequence of courses, each with its own plate, silverware, and timing. This multi-course structure turned the meal into an extended event that lasted hours, creating space for conversation, connection, and celebration. The table setting itself was a work of art. Each place setting had multiple forks on the left side of the plate, multiple knives and spoons on the right. There might be a salad fork, dinner fork and dessert fork, a soup spoon, dinner knife, and possibly a fish knife. Glasses included water, wine, and sometimes champagne flutes. The meal began with an appetizer course, perhaps shrimp cocktail, oysters, or a fancy pâté with crackers. This course was served in the living room while everyone enjoyed pre-dinner drinks. It set the tone for the evening and allowed guests to arrive and settle in before moving to the dining room. Once everyone was seated at the table, the soup course arrived. This might be a clear consommé, a creamy bisque, or a hearty vegetable soup. Soup was eaten slowly, giving people time to talk and enjoy each other's company. After the soup came the salad course, usually a simple green salad with a light vinaigrette. In the 70s, this might be the famous wedge salad with blue cheese dressing, or a more elaborate composed salad with multiple vegetables arranged artistically on the plate. The main course was the centerpiece, the turkey or roast, accompanied by multiple side dishes passed family-style around the table. This course took the longest, with everyone eating slowly, taking seconds, and enjoying the culmination of hours of cooking. After the main course, there was often a pause, dishes were cleared, and people relaxed before dessert. Some families served a palate cleanser, a small scoop of sorbet or a light fruit dish, before the final course. Dessert arrived with coffee and tea. Multiple desserts might be offered: pie, cake, cookies, and those special holiday treats that only appeared once a year. This final course was leisurely, with no rush to finish and leave the table. This formal, multi-course structure created a rhythm to the meal that encouraged lingering and conversation. It turned eating into an experience rather than just refueling. It showed respect for the food, for the cook's efforts, and for the people gathered around the table. Today, we tend to put everything on the table at once and eat more quickly. But there was something beautiful about that slower, more structured approach that made Christmas dinner feel truly special and set apart from everyday meals. Handwritten menu cards. At the fanciest Christmas dinners, each place setting included a small handwritten menu card listing all the courses that would be served. These cards were more than practical. They were decorative elements that added elegance and anticipation to the meal. Creating menu cards was a task that fell to whoever had the best handwriting in the family. The cards themselves might be purchased from a stationery store or crafted at home from cardstock. Some families used calligraphy pens to write in beautiful flowing script. Others simply wrote neatly with a fine-point pen. The menu listed each course in order: appetizer, soup, salad, main course with sides, and dessert. Sometimes the specific dishes were named crown roast of pork with wild rice stuffing, or grandmother's famous mincemeat pie. Other times, the menu was more general. The The cards were often decorated with small drawings or stamps, holly leaves, Christmas trees, or simple border designs. Some families added the date and year, creating keepsakes that could be saved and remembered. Looking back at old menu cards decades later brought back memories of specific dinners and the people who had gathered around the table. Placing a menu card at each setting served practical purposes. Guests knew what to expect and could pace themselves accordingly. If you knew that multiple courses were coming, you didn't fill up on bread and appetizers. You saved room for the main event and dessert. But the real purpose was ceremonial. The menu cards announced that this wasn't an ordinary meal. This was an occasion important enough to warrant planning, preparation, and presentation. They elevated the dinner from simple eating to fine dining, making everyone feel special and valued. Before anyone touched their food, Christmas dinner began with a formal blessing or grace. This wasn't a quick mumbled prayer. This was a moment of genuine gratitude and reflection, when everyone at the table paused to acknowledge the abundance before them and the people gathered to share it. The blessing was usually led by the family patriarch or matriarch, often a grandfather or grandmother whose voice carried the weight of years and wisdom. Everyone at the table held hands, creating a physical connection that circled the entire group. Heads were bowed, and for a moment, the room fell completely silent except for the voice leading the prayer. Some families used traditional prayers passed down through generations. Others spoke spontaneously, thanking God or the universe for the food, for the hands that prepared it, for the family gathered together, and for the health and prosperity that made the celebration possible. The prayer often included remembrance of family members who had passed away or who couldn't be present, acknowledging their absence and keeping their memory alive. In some households, the blessing was followed by each person sharing something they were grateful for from the past year. This extended the moment of reflection, giving everyone a chance to speak and be heard. Children might mention getting a new bike or doing well in school. Adults talked about health, family milestones, or simply being together. The blessing served multiple purposes beyond the religious or spiritual. It created a clear beginning to the meal, marking the transition from preparation to celebration. It reminded everyone that the abundance on the table wasn't guaranteed or automatic. It resulted from work, from luck, from circumstances that could easily have been different. Most importantly, the blessing created a moment of unity. In a family where people might disagree about politics, religion, or life choices, the blessing was a time when everyone came together in shared gratitude. Differences were set aside, at least for this moment, in recognition of what connected rather than what divided. Today, many families have moved away from formal blessings before meals. We are more secular, more rushed, more likely to just sit down and start eating. But something has been lost in that shift, that moment of pause, of gratitude, of conscious recognition that being together around a table full of food is a blessing worth acknowledging, not something to take for granted or rush through without thought. In many families, Christmas dinner was preceded by a performance from the children. This might be a skit, a song, a poem recitation, or a nativity play acted out in the living room while the adults watched and applauded. The performance was often rehearsed for weeks, with children practicing their lines and learning their parts. The youngest children might simply recite, "'Twas the night before Christmas," or sing Jingle Bells. Older children took on more ambitious projects, full nativity plays with costumes made from bathrobes and towels, or original skits about Santa Claus and his elves. Parents and grandparents would gather in the living room, finding seats on the couch or pulling in chairs from the dining room. The children would disappear to prepare, then make their entrance with great ceremony. Mistakes were common. Forgotten lines, giggles, costumes falling off. But these imperfections made the performances more endearing. The adults watched with genuine attention and appreciation, not just polite tolerance. They clapped enthusiastically, laughed at the jokes, and praised the performers afterward. Photographs were taken, capturing children in their costumes, mid-performance, creating visual records of these moments. These performances served important purposes in family life. They gave children a sense of contribution to the celebration. They weren't just passive recipients of gifts and food. They were active participants who added to the day's joy. The performances also created shared family stories that would be retold for years. Remember when Tommy forgot his lines and just stood there? Remember when Sarah's angel wings fell off in the middle of the song? The tradition taught children skills beyond memorization and performance. They learned about preparation, about managing nervousness, about the satisfaction of doing something well in front of an audience. They learned that their contributions mattered, that their efforts were valued by the people who loved them. As children grew older and became teenagers, they often resisted continuing the tradition, feeling too sophisticated for such childish activities. But many later regretted giving it up, missing the simplicity and joy of those performances. Some families adapted, having teenagers help younger cousins with their performances, passing the tradition to the next generation while still maintaining involvement. The Christmas performance created a clear marker of childhood within the family. When you were young, you performed. When you grew up, you watched. And someday, you'd watch your own children perform, completing the cycle and understanding, finally, why the adults had always seemed so delighted by even the most amateur productions. After the heavy Christmas dinner, many families had a tradition of taking a walk around the neighborhood together. This wasn't exercise in the modern sense. It was a way to aid digestion, get fresh air, and see the Christmas lights and decorations that neighbors had put up. The walk usually happened in the late afternoon or early evening, after dinner was finished but before it was fully dark. Everyone bundled up in coats, scarves, and gloves. The group would set out together, walking slowly, still full from the meal. The neighborhood looked different on Christmas Day. Houses that usually seemed ordinary were transformed by lights and decorations. Inflatable Santas and snowmen dotted front yards. Windows glowed with Christmas trees visible from the street. Some houses had elaborate light displays that must have taken weeks to install. Walking together created a different kind of conversation than sitting at the dinner table. People paired off naturally, siblings walking together, cousins catching up, parents holding young children's hands. The movement and the fresh air loosened tongues. Conversations that might have felt too serious or intimate at the dinner table flowed more easily during the walk. Children ran ahead, then circled back, their energy seemingly endless despite the big meal. They pointed out decorations, debated which house had the best lights, and made plans for what they'd do with their new toys when they got home. The walk also served as a natural break in the day's activities. It separated dinner from dessert and gift opening, creating distinct phases to the celebration. It gave the cook a chance to rest and clean up a bit without feeling rushed. It allowed everyone's appetite to return so they could enjoy dessert later. Some families made the walk more elaborate, planning a route that took them past the houses known for the best decorations. Others kept it simple, just circling the block once or twice. The distance didn't matter. What mattered was being outside together, sharing the quiet beauty of the neighborhood on Christmas Day. In today's world, we're more likely to collapse on the couch after a big meal, turning on the television or checking our phones. As Christmas dinner wound down, a ritual began that was almost as important as the meal itself, the packaging of leftovers for guests to take home. This wasn't a casual help-yourself situation. This was an organized, generous process where the host ensured that everyone left with food to enjoy in the days following Christmas. The kitchen became an assembly line. Tupperware containers, aluminum foil, plastic wrap, and paper plates were laid out on the counter. The host, usually the same person who had cooked the meal, began portioning out leftovers with care and attention. Each guest received a balanced selection: some turkey or ham, a scoop of stuffing, mashed potatoes, a serving of vegetables, and a slice of pie or piece of cake. The portions were generous, enough for at least one full meal, sometimes two. Everything was packed carefully to prevent spills and leaks. The host knew each person's preferences. Aunt Mary loved the sweet potato casserole, so she got extra. Uncle Bob wasn't fond of green beans, so his container skipped those. The children got extra dessert. Single people or those living alone received larger portions, ensuring they'd have good food for several days. This distribution of leftovers was an act of love and care. It extended the hospitality beyond the dinner itself, ensuring that the abundance of Christmas lasted longer than just one meal. It also acknowledged the reality that the host couldn't possibly eat all the leftovers alone. Sharing them prevented waste and spread the joy. For guests, taking home leftovers was a treat. The next day, when you were tired and didn't want to cook, you could heat up Christmas dinner and enjoy it all over again. The food often tasted even better the second day, with the flavors having melded together overnight. The leftover containers also served as physical reminders of the gathering. Days later, when you opened your refrigerator and saw the Tupperware, you'd remember the dinner, the people, the conversations. Opening the container and smelling the food brought back the warmth and happiness of Christmas Day. Some families had specific containers they used year after year for leftover distribution. The final tradition of Christmas dinner was perhaps the least glamorous but most meaningful: the late-night cleanup when the meal was over, guests had gone home, and the family that lived in the house tackled the mountain of dishes, pots, and pans together. This wasn't a chore done by one person while others relaxed. This was a group effort, with everyone contributing according to their abilities. Someone filled the sink with hot, soapy water. Someone else scraped plates and rinsed dishes. A third person dried and put things away. Even children helped, carrying dishes from the dining room to the kitchen or drying silverware. The kitchen was a disaster. Every pot had been used, every serving dish was dirty, and the counter was covered with the remnants of the feast. But working together, the family transformed the chaos back into order. There was something satisfying about the process, about seeing the counter gradually clear and the dish rack fill with clean plates. This was when the best conversations happened. The formality of dinner was over. Everyone was tired but content. Working side by side, hands in dishwater or holding dish towels, people talked about the day. They laughed about funny moments from dinner, discussed how the food had turned out, and made plans for the next day. Stories emerged during cleanup that hadn't been told at the dinner table. Someone would remember a Christmas from years past, and others would add their own memories. The cook might reveal secrets about how a dish was made or confess to a near disaster that had been averted at the last minute. The work created a sense of camaraderie and shared accomplishment. You'd survived Christmas dinner together, the cooking, the serving, the eating, and now the cleanup. There was pride in that, a feeling that you'd done something significant as a family. Sometimes music played during cleanup, Christmas carols or just favorite songs. Sometimes the television was on in the background, though no one really watched it. Sometimes there was just the sound of running water, clinking dishes, and conversation. But something has been lost. Those conversations that happened only during late-night cleanup, that sense of shared responsibility and accomplishment, that final moment of togetherness before everyone scattered to their separate rooms and the holiday officially ended. The cleanup wasn't just about dishes. It was about closing the circle of the day together, about ensuring that no one person carried the burden alone, about finding connection and meaning even in mundane tasks. It was a reminder that family isn't just about the celebrations and the special moments. It's also about showing up for the ordinary work, the unglamorous necessities, the times when what's needed isn't applause or appreciation, but simply another pair of hands willing to help.